special edition of Negro Please today. I'm Dallas Scott, HllyWdHff, the producer Quan. This show's going to be about George Floyd. It's going to be about what's going on in Minneapolis. This is my hometown. I went to elementary school 4 blocks from there at Laura Ingalls Wilder Elementary School. Went there for about 3 months. There's so much. This whole thing just hits so much home to me because it's the Target store that was burned down and looted. Actually, I don't know if the Target was put on fire, but it was definitely looted. Targets were around long before Walmart, so like that's where we went. We went shopping and stuff. Like, my mom's house was 8 blocks from that Target, in the Longfellow neighborhood, in the Minnehaha neighborhoods. When I think about, somebody will say something and you'll reminisce about something in your life. When we talk about things that when we were younger, like penny candies.
Yeah.
I think about the convenience store that was 4 blocks away on the corner, because that's where we used to buy our Now and Laters.
Yeah.
And our green apple Jolly Ranchers, and I like the blue ones. The store that this happened in front of, that store has been there as long as I can remember. Cup Foods has been there. It didn't have that big fancy sign that it has now. It was just a neighborhood store. And that was a store that back in the day, in every poor neighborhood had one of these stores where, remember when you had paper food stamps?
Yeah.
And
White paper.
Yeah. And you could only use food stamps for food.
Right.
And when you used them, they had to give you back food stamps for change.
Right.
But that was a store where you could buy diapers.
With food stamps?
Or if you went in there with the food stamp and you needed cash, they would give you the cash back.
Yeah.
Like that was that store in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The very first girl I ever went on a date with lived directly across the street from that store. We went and saw Kwame and Troop in concert. That's how.
Wow. Wow.
At the Orpheum downtown Minneapolis.
Kwame was the only rapper ever to pull off polka dots.
Right.
I remember.
And to make it a big fashion statement. Right.
Yeah.
No. So this is my home. This is like where I grew up with. And it's so sad to see this. But there's a lot that people don't know. And that the 3rd precinct had a Minneapolis Police Department in general, but the 3rd precinct has had a very, very, very long history of police abuse, especially against minorities.
Yeah.
We talked the other day. My brother was beat up by a cop from the 3rd precinct when he was like, I want to say he was old enough to drive. So he was like 16 or 17, and he didn't do anything wrong. The cops were looking. He was at his friend's house. His friend was like, hey, the cops are outside looking at your car with flashlights. He went outside with the keys and was like, hey, here are the keys. Is there something you need?
Yeah.
And they beat him up for that. I talked about last week, 3 days ago, I talked about my daughter and her friends at the park being pulled out of the car. The black guy who's in the passenger seat, 3rd precinct.
Yeah.
I've talked in the past about how I was harassed by a police officer for driving my wife's car, and he didn't understand why I was driving my wife's car.
Yeah.
3rd precinct. This is a long-running history. When I first started radio 28 years ago, I used to do 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. But on Monday nights, we had our community affairs program, and there was this guy by the name of Ron Edwards that had that show. And every Monday night, this was 28 years ago, all Ron did was attack the Minneapolis Police Department for the brutality against minorities. And I used to hate that show because I had to produce it like Quan is producing us for that first hour. And I used to have to sit in there and listen to Ron go after them. And at some point I was like, will you just shut up already? I just want to play my music. I want to, go on. And now I feel like I'm Ron Edwards.
Yeah.
Right. Thumping the chest for like I feel like that's who I am now. And everybody's seen the video. I saw this video. I couldn't watch the whole thing. I couldn't. I probably got about 2.5 minutes in. and I felt like Cuba Gooding Jr. in Boys the Men. I was kicking in
Boys
the
in the
air.
Hood.
Boys in the Hood.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was kicking in the air. I was punching. I was so frustrated and so hurt. And then people act like black people don't have a right to be mad, and police brutality against blacks doesn't exist. Here's what we've seen in the last 3 months has come to light, right?
Mhm.
Breonna Taylor was asleep in her bed. She gets shot by 3 cops.
Yeah.
Ahmaud Arbery is running for his life, being chased by a retired police officer.
Mm-hmm.
We see Monday, Amy Cooper threatened to call the police on a black guy who's asking her to obey the rules and put her dog on a leash.
Oh, there was no threat. She called the police. You know what I mean? She called, but
her,
the threat is there.
Right.
But yeah, she called
the police saying, "I'm going to tell them a black man is threatening me."
Mm-hmm. And you see her call 911 and say, "There's an African American man in the park and he's threatening me."
Right. Nate Cooper could have been George Floyd.
Yeah.
This
is it George Floyd or Greg Floyd?
George.
Okay.
Yeah. We see this so often, unfortunately, yes, we see it a lot in the African American community. If this was a white guy, I would be just as outraged. If it was a Latino guy, an Asian guy, if it was a white woman, a black woman, I would be just as outraged.
Right.
3 other officers there, and not one of them does the right thing. Not one of them. We talked a couple weeks ago about the video from California with the guy who's essentially surrendered to police. He's got his hands behind his head. He's standing up against the wall, and all of a sudden the other cop comes over and just starts wailing on him, and the female cop just stands there and watches it happen.
Right. And in comparison, that guy got off easy.
Yeah. Exactly. No, right.
You know what I mean?
He's alive.
That and here's what's sad about that story. This guy gets punched by a cop repeatedly. I think he even gets kneed once or twice. And anybody who watches that video, with the exception of probably his lawyer if he hires one, stops and thinks, well, at least he didn't get shot.
Right.
And we go on with our lives as that being an acceptable amount of force that police can use.
Right.
We're mad about it. We're upset. But it's like, you know what? Thank God he didn't get killed there.
Right.
Thank God he didn't fight back. That's where our society has come to with police brutality.
Yeah.
That as long as they don't shoot or kill us or beat us cripple, they can punch and knee us a handful of times. And just be thankful.
That's acceptable.
Just be thankful. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to march for that guy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
We're talking about George Floyd and the stuff that's happened to black people recently. But also, if you watched our show Monday, we talked about old episodes of Cops, right? And how crazy it was that we watched police officers drag white people out of houses and kick and beat them down. And we used to watch this show like it was real entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was endless seasons of Cops.
Endless.
I don't know how many endless seasons, like years Cops was on. Right?
I'm actually going to look that up. I'm curious.
You know what I mean?
Curious,
years, to the point that they now even show reruns of it on certain stations.
Yeah.
And then there are these other cop shows that are very similar to Cops
32 seasons of Cops.
32 seasons of Cops.
32 seasons of police brutality.
Right.
Recorded it.
Right. And now there are these other shows like Live PD and different things, and people are like, oh man, you watch these shows and you see what the cops really go through. And nobody in the history of arguing has ever said, oh, cops have an easy job. None of us are saying that. Police don't get called until the situation is beyond responsible citizens handling it, right? So police show up when it's escalated or it's at its worst or we just don't know what to do at this point. In most cases, that's when the police are called or should be called, right?
Yeah, there's some that are called for barbecues. And
yeah, of course. You know what I mean? There are some that are a waste of our time.
Oregon has actually made this illegal. The state of Oregon, it's illegal for you to call. It's actually a hate crime in the state of Oregon.
Good.
That if you call on any race, just because they're being that race and you don't like what they're doing, it's a hate crime.
And this is the thing. Like nobody's mad about the police being called when something bad is actually happening.
No, it's a
You know what I
thankless
mean?
job.
Yeah, and we get that, right? You know what I mean? There's a saying like, people wave at firemen, but we give the police the finger, right?
Right.
But you have to think about this, like, why are we giving the police the finger?
Right.
I understand that sometimes they have to make a tough decision, and we may not like it. And when explained, you kind of get 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Maybe it was the right thing, maybe it wasn't. Those are tough decisions. That's part of the job.
The mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry,
yes,
yesterday was calling for the arrest of these officers, and he made a very good point.
right,
He said there are times when there are split-second decisions that have to be made.
right,
And he goes, and sometimes people lose their lives in those situations.
right,
Right or wrong, you have to make a decision right now, and you react.
right.
I understand that. All right, whether I agree with them killing
Right.
or not, I understand that you have to make the decision right now.
You don't get a redo, a
Right.
do-over. You know what I mean?
And he made it very clear that this was not one of those times.
And that's exactly the point that I was about to make.
This is
yes.
you have 6. The video is 8 minutes long. I couldn't get through all of it. So I don't know if it was 6 minutes or 8 minutes that he actually held his knee on the throat. This isn't that time. It's not like you don't shoot people who are on the ground begging for their life, begging that they can't breathe. This man is begging that he cannot breathe. Every cop in America is aware of the Eric Garner situation.
right.
Every person in America is aware of the Eric Garner situation. To me, the worst part about this is the arrogance of that motherfucker. To know that he's being taped, to hear him saying, I cannot breathe, and still doing it.
Man, that's the part that gets me, is because I couldn't watch the whole video either, and I got to a point where there was 2 or 3 videos that I watched, and there was one of like a security camera where they actually show him being arrested and put in handcuffs, and they walk around that side of the vehicle, and then you see the other video where there's literally 3 police officers kneeling on him and 1 standing up.
Yep.
And it gets to the point of people are like, oh, I want to see more footage. I want to know. There's no more footage to see. There's nothing else to see. There's nothing to explain why 4 trained police officers have a man handcuffed already and can't get him into the back of a vehicle. How is kneeling on him helping that process? Your job as an officer is to serve and protect, right?
Right.
They're serving the community. The bank called the police on this man for writing a bad check, okay? It's a white collar crime at this point. He didn't rob anybody, he didn't beat anybody up, he wasn't on meth spazzing out, right? On the videos, you don't see him fighting. There's a little bit of jerking or whatever. Everybody jerks, because when your hands are put behind your back in an unnatural, uncomfortable position, it doesn't feel good. And when they grab you by your arm, they don't do it politely. So sometimes you jerk back. However, he's handcuffed already. There's no reason for them to kneel on his body, however it made it to the ground. Once this happens and you have your knee on a guy's neck, as a police officer, and he says, I can't breathe, you should feel safe that you, as a cop, have 3 other officers there. 2 of them have their knee on his back. You should be able to move your knee off of his neck. You should be able to provide some sort of assistance as a police officer to this member of the community who has not been found guilty of anything, only accused of something, in which you are only transporting him to jail at this point, or to a holding facility where he can be booked, processed, and the legal system can do its job. That is not what these officers are doing. They are torturing him. And his torture led to his death. Why are they doing that? Why is this allowed?
Who might be the greatest MMA fighter of all time, was like, this is the most torturous, brutal technique you can use on somebody. Like, if you use this technique in at the UFC, you get disqualified.
Right.
Well, in MMA, if you're choking somebody out, they have the opportunity to tap out and someone jumps in.
Right.
That tap out usually happens within 20 seconds when you're getting choked.
Right. And this guy was tapping out. He was begging.
He asked for his mom.
Yes.
This
Who's
is
dead. His mom has passed away by
Wow.
This is what drives me nuts, is that people go, oh, well, if you can talk, you can breathe. You apparently have never been choked.
Right.
Because usually when you're getting choked, you use the last bit of air you have to say things like, I can't breathe.
Right.
You're choking me.
Yes.
Stop. Because you know, you're not getting any more air in.
You have the slide I just sent you. Will you put that up for me real quick? I think this is why he's so arrogant that he believes he can get away with anything. So we know about the George Floyd on May 25th. In 2011, I think his name is Derek. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. It looks like Chauvin or Chauvin.
Yeah, Derek
as
Chauvin.
the police officer. He was put in 2011. He was put on leave for an inappropriate police shooting of an Alaskan Native American by the name of Leroy Martinez. Chauvin shot Ira Latrell Tolles, an unarmed black man who was 21 years old in 2008. Chauvin was one of the officers who murdered Wayne Reyes, a Latino man. He put 16 bullets went into Wayne Reyes. A total of 42 rounds were shot off. Chauvin was one of the, and another officer were chasing a car in 2005, causing the death of 3 people. So I have to believe in my mind. I know cops who've been on the force and never had to pull their gun before. For this guy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 deaths. Actually, I'm sorry. I don't think that Leroy Martinez died. So in his career, like I said, there are guys who have literally never pulled their gun.
Yeah.
There are guys who have never fired a round in the line of duty.
Right.
How many guys have been responsible for 6 or 7 deaths?
Yeah.
This is a bad record to have. Every other police officer in the world can do this, right? And people are talking about the protesting in Minneapolis. I don't condone the looting. I don't condone the violence at all. But I understand where it comes from.
Yeah.
You're talking about 30 plus years of brutality by this police department. And people have just had enough. And why would people in Minneapolis think that they're going to get justice when this is the same county, Hennepin County, where Philando Castillo was killed and the guy walked? And now this guy is being represented by the same lawyer that got Geronimo Yanez, the guy who shot Philando Castillo. We've seen the video. He did everything he was supposed to do. Yes, sir. I have a weapon. I have a concealed weapon. I'm reaching for my weapon.
Yeah.
I'm reaching for my permit. He did everything that you are supposed to do and was just fired on anyway. Yeah. At no point did you ever see the gun. At no point did he pull the gun out. Why would people in Minneapolis think that they're going to get justice? Now,
why would anybody in general think that black people are going to get justice? How often does it happen? Well, we talked about this last week. Rodney King, and a friend of mine on Facebook pointed this out. Rodney King only got beat up pretty bad, but he only got beat up.
Right.
Only.
I mean,
caught on video, no justice. He won a civil settlement.
The crazy thing about the Rodney King thing, right, is that was filmed by a guy who was in his apartment, right, or something like that. Yeah. He just grabbed his video camera and started filming because he was like, "What the hell's going on here?"
Right. Yeah.
Or this is cool, whatever. Right.
Right.
Like if that guy doesn't have the reaction at that time to go and get the camera, it completely changes the world right now, right?
Yeah. No, nobody ever sees that.
Right.
Nothing happens.
Right. But it's the reason why that guy's a hero, because he's the reason why that people now grab their cameras.
Exactly.
If he doesn't grab that camera back then in 1980, was it 5 or 80? He doesn't grab the camera and
94.
start filming. 94?
Yeah, I was going to say it was 90 something. Yeah, 94.
If he doesn't grab that camera, and that's the old VHS big luggy camera.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. This was back when if you had a video camera, it was
you were
like,
rich.
Yeah, it was like, I got me a video camera. Check this out,
You had money,
Yeah.
So if he doesn't do that, it changes the way we do things now, right? It's the ripple effect.
Right.
Because when we see him do that, now we see things that we don't think are right. Everybody pulls out their phone.
Right.
And wants to record now. And now cameras are much more readily available than they were back then because everybody has one on their phone. But that guy really changed history.
Yeah. I mean, it's huge because a lot of people are saying like, oh, where does all these police things come from. And it's just like mass shootings. It's not that there are more of them. It's just now because of social media, because of camera phones, people are now being made more aware of them. People are now seeing them. The police have been acting like this, but everybody didn't have a camera on them, and everybody in the car didn't have a camera on them, and everybody walking down the street didn't have a camera on them. So now we're seeing every single thing that happens. We get to see the good, the bad, the ugly, the right and the wrong. The thing is even with all this technology, there are still people who are like, "Oh, I need to see more. I want to wait until the whole story comes out." And in some situations, yeah, you need to hear the whole story, right? You see the camera comes on and the police and some guy are having a one-on-one fight. You don't know what happened or what started that. But in this case of Mr. Floyd, that's not what happened. You don't
need to see anymore.
You don't exactly. You see these guys kneeling on him. What more do you need to see? What could have possibly happened before this man is handcuffed by 4 police officers that would make a person go, okay, now it makes sense to kneel on his neck for 6 minutes? What could he have done? A mass shooting? Shot up a bank? I mean, what could he possibly have done? Did he have C4 attached to his chest? I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like what? Like, get to the point where you're going to say that one thing that's going to make me and everybody else say, "Oh, I get it. That's why they had his knee on his neck for 6 minutes. The trigger to the bomb was attached to the back of his neck, and the cop was holding it down with his knee." I mean, how far-fetched does a story have to get before a reasonably thinking person says, okay, that makes sense. That's why they were doing that. In the midst of him saying, "I can't breathe," so on and so forth.
So this is just more background on the Minneapolis Police Department, right?
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, there was a federal racial discrimination lawsuit brought on by the Minneapolis Police Department by 5 police officers, including the now police chief. They brought this against the city. And part of this was because there was a gang of they weren't motorcycle cops. They were police officers who had a motorcycle club, and they were associated with a motorcycle club with the same name out of Chicago called the Heat. And that motorcycle club would fly Confederate flags, wear Nazi medals, and basically were a white supremacist group. And it's crazy because the guy who was it's an interesting situation because one of the guys who brought the suit is now the police chief, but one of the guys the suit was brought against is now the head of the police union. and the guy in the police union was like, "We were cleared of all charges. There was an The problem with this is, and this is, if I can conduct an investigation on myself, I didn't do it.
Of course.
And I'm not a big person for federal oversight. Like, I believe states should be states and the federal government should be federal. But I really think that it's time now for the federal authorities to start investigating. I don't want to say all police shootings, but I for surely believe any police shootings where the victim is unarmed, or anything that happens to a victim that is already in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Unarmed people, there are times when they're fighting, and maybe you're fighting, and then at some point you freak out because you feel like they're going to get the best of you in this fight. You pull your gun and shoot. I'm trying to think of scenarios in my head where, like, you might shoot an unarmed person.
Yeah.
Because they're just bigger than you and stronger than you, and you can't beat them, so you have to defend yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know how you have to kill a man with handcuffs on.
And you don't. That's the short answer. You don't. Because at that point, if they've complied enough, or you have overpowered them enough to get them in handcuffs, what more can they do? What more? Once you're in handcuffs, I mean, unless you're Michael J. White, I mean, your legs ain't gonna do much except try to run away. Yeah.
But
you can only do so much kicking.
Michael J. White, though, like, and these guys, anybody's ever started with martial arts, though, like, you need your hands for balance, though. Like, when you're kicking, you use your hands for balance. There's like, you put your hands in there's a balance situation here.
Exactly.
And even And here's my thing. They say he's a resisting arrest. Did you send the video of him being arrested, but the handcuffs being put on him? Do we have that video?
I don't.
It
might be. It might have been a link.
A couple things that went on here. There's a video. They said he was a resisting arrest. Well, there was a video that the Washington Post got a hold of from another store.
Yeah, I think.
And that video shows that he's in handcuffs. At no point in that video is there any resisting.
Right.
I feel like when the cop picks him up off the ground, like he turned. We have that video. Can we show that video? I don't want to show the whole thing, but we'll show enough of it to show. There's a point where the cop picks him up on the ground. He kind of looks back and says something at the cop, but it looks like to me, I wasn't there. I'm only looking at the video. It looks like he was in pain or something. He was like, "Ouch" or "Stop" or something.
Yeah.
And the cops walk him across the street. The cop that puts his knee on his neck isn't even there yet.
Yeah. At least not in the video.
Yeah, right. At least not in the video. Yeah, he's not there yet. And if this man is handcuffed, you got the video? Are we showing?
Yeah,
we're showing the video now. Okay. If this man is handcuffed, and you're putting him into a squad car, let's say he's kicking you, right?
Right.
That's in my mind, headbutt maybe.
Those are the only two moves he has.
Right.
It's got to be a kick or a headbutt.
Right.
Or what is he going to do? Shoulder you?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Come on.
And you have 4 police officers there. You can't grab his legs and like there's no other way for you to do this. I don't understand this.
These ain't rookie cops.
No.
And this is what bothers me. We're literally trying to find an excuse. We're trying to find a reason to say, "Oh, he did this." So that's how this escalated.
Right.
Right? Rookie cops wouldn't know like if this is their first day and they haven't encountered things over their years of policing and a guy kicks them and then they kind of lose it and don't know what to do. It's still not okay, but you kind of understand and get it. These guys.
There's one thing in training for for something and then actually being in the same position.
Right. You know what I mean?
Like Mike Tyson says, everybody's
has a plan until they get hit, right?
Right.
This guy with the knee on his neck has been a cop for 19 years.
Yep.
I don't know how long you have to be a cop to have seen it all, but I'm pretty sure this guy's seen most of it.
Right.
I'm pretty sure this wouldn't be the first guy who he put in handcuffs and then still tried to put up a fight and not get into the back of a police car. So worst case scenario, this guy is Michael Jai White's #1 student,
right?
And he has 7,000 kicks in his bag. I don't see how any of those kicks and shoulder moves or whatever lead to him being on the ground with 3 full-grown trained police officers, or one with knees on his legs, one with knees on his back, and one with the knee on his neck.
And
they're just
clear.
sitting there on his body for 6 minutes.
The knee on the neck is not a procedure that police officers in Minneapolis are supposed to use.
Yeah.
This is an unauthorized procedure. This is something you did intentionally. You've been on the force. So my ex-wife has a friend who is a police officer for the Minneapolis police, and they've been friends as long as I've known my ex-wife. And I guess she explains to me that her and him got into an argument last night.
Mm-hmm.
And they got into the argument because he made the comment that the guy with the knee on the neck is the senior officer.
Okay.
So the other guys are just following orders. There has to come a point. If I'm your boss and I tell you to go rob a bank, you go rob a bank?
Of course not.
If I'm your boss and I tell you just go over there and shoot that person, we're not going to fire them. I want you to go shoot them. Do you go shoot them?
Of course not.
There has to. When I was a kid, I saw some movie, and the movie was about there comes a time in life where you have to question authority. I don't even remember what the movie was about, but I just remember there was a scene in there where the lady was like, I didn't raise you to be like this. I raised you to question authority.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those situations, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to always question authority because you know if you feel something's right, you do it.
Yeah.
But when you think somewhere in the back of your brain, nah, this isn't right.
You ever like seen a fight, like a street fight? Maybe somebody you know was fighting, right?
Right.
One person starts to get the best of the other person, meaning they're clearly dominating this street fight.
Right.
90% of the time, I don't care if it's thugs in the street, gang members, just psychotic killers out, and they decide to start fighting each other. Almost all the time, when one guy has had enough, you see somebody step in, and it's usually the guy who's winning. It's usually one of his friends or somebody on his side. Step in and say, all right, bro, you won. Stop.
Right.
You know what I mean? All right, we got him.
We saw that in the Karate Kid, right?
You know, yeah. Johnny, he's had enough. You know, right? You see it all the time.
Right.
Like, I've been that guy to step in and be like, okay, bro, he don't know his name right now. Just
right. It's
stop.
over.
This fight is over. You won.
You won.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You never see police do this. Why I understand this is your commanding officer. This is your higher up. Yet and still, at some point, you can't say, wait a minute, boss. He can't breathe. Wait a minute, boss. Like, the other two officers here, they got him. They got him pinned down. Lift up a little bit. Move your knee back.
Yeah.
But they're looking at the camera, wondering why they're being filmed.
We've all seen the movie, or most of us seen the movie, A Few Good Men, right?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's before Tom Cruise went crazy, but the scene with him and Demi Moore when they get into it, then the scene with him and Jack Nicklaus in the courtroom.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still found guilty after that, right?
Right.
And then Corporal Downey looks at or Private First Class Downey looks at Corporal Dawson. He's like, I don't understand. We followed orders. We did what we're told. And then the other guy responds to him. He goes, yeah, but our job is to protect those who can't protect themselves, and we failed at that. That's what these other three officers did.
Right.
They failed at protecting the guy who couldn't protect himself.
Right. And this is my whole thing. I really try to like avoid reading too much about this and seeing too much because it's everywhere. And I don't want to walk around my house depressed and thinking about this every time because it becomes too much, like for my mental state. And I recommend everybody else, sometimes you just have to log off. You have to not continually watch all these videos and read these things. Me and Dallas, we do a show about it. We have to talk about it. We have to learn the facts. We have to read these articles. I encourage you to know the facts, but not to overwhelm yourself with it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's been very overwhelming the last 2 days because this is my home.
Right.
And like I live in Vegas now, but Minneapolis is forever going to be my home.
Yeah.
And I have so many friends who are involved in this because they're protesting or they're part of the news media down there. Or I have a friend of mine whose daughter was originally, she was just she said all they were doing was she had a sign and they were just, they had a chant. They were like, no justice, no peace or something they were saying. And she got shot by a rubber bullet by a cop. She hit her it missed her eye by like a quarter inch.
Yeah.
But she like you could see where it hit her in her face and like her eye is still swollen and black because it was that close to her eye. You see this. And then you see that this cop's house, there's like 70 police officers protecting this guy's house right now.
Yeah. Because
there's a big protest outside of his house. They've had to block off the street. I feel bad for his neighbors because they got to go through this.
Right.
Right. There still hasn't been an arrest made.
Right.
The mayor yesterday, Jacob Fry, got on the news and was like, why is there no arrest? We need an arrest.
And this is where when people talk about, they get upset about the rioting and they talk about all the, to me, the kind of pointless things. Is like, what do you expect these people to do? An innocent man has been killed and there's been no justice, and we have video to prove it. So my thought is, which has always been my thought, how long before this gets to me? So I'm asking people, and there's a meme floating around. I even reposted it, and it was there's one comment about the riots just enforce stereotypes, so on and so forth, whatever. And then there's a response to it, and it says, well, we tried kneeling, and y'all didn't like that either.
Quietly kneeling.
Yeah, quietly kneeling. And so you have a problem with Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. and nothing happens. You have a problem with us rioting. And guess what, though? Nothing happens. So it gets to a point where, and I'm trying to be very careful with my words because I'm not calling for anything. I'm not asking people to do anything. But I am saying, if this was a member of my family or somebody who I love dearly and care about, even as a God-fearing Christian man, I could not stand by quietly and not return violence. And again, I'm not calling for violence, but at some point, there will be violence, and not just against personal property. This cannot continue, and you expect a people, any people, black people, Hispanic people, white people. I mean, white people have a history of fighting back violently. I mean, the Boston Tea Party, so there comes a point where, and we're not even there yet. That's the sad part. There will be a tipping point. And this could be the thing that launches it, but at what point will people say enough is enough? You can't just kill black people and get away with it just because you're a cop. Because if I kneel on anybody's neck and they die, I'm going to get arrested right away. I'm not going to get fired from my job. I'm getting arrested. If anybody else does it, if a doctor does it, he's getting arrested. If an athlete does it, he's getting arrested. Everybody's getting arrested except police officers who are clearly not doing their job. They're murdering people. And I hate to say it, but until police officers start killing white people, they won't go to jail immediately, or they will rarely go to jail, or we'll keep getting this status quo. And I'm not calling for white people to be killed. I don't want the police to kill anybody. But that seems to be the only time we see justice, just like the black cop, I believe he was a Somalian police officer, shot a white woman, and guess what? There was no police union defending him.
Where was that at, by the way?
I believe that was in Minneapolis as well, right? You know what I mean? So same place.
Yeah.
He went to jail right away, charged with murder, on the job, doing his job. And those circumstances were a lot more arguable than these. I didn't see a bunch of white people online defending him. She wasn't even American, the victim. Not that matters much, but just saying. She was like Australian or something, or Austrian maybe. Yeah. But whatever, she was.
I feel like I don't even know why I thought of this, right? But this guy is sitting at home. There's a huge protest going outside his house. His house is barricaded by dozens and dozens and dozens of police officers. I want to know if he's sitting in his house like a smug asshole, or if he's literally in fear of his life right now.
How long are they going to spend American tax dollars, or the tax dollars of the people of Minneapolis, to have all these police sit outside this man's house?
Right.
Who clearly killed somebody. He was fired, so he's not a cop anymore.
Right.
So why are the police being paid to protect this person?
Right. So like my friend Eric Ward, he posted that this keeps happening up there. Eric's from Minneapolis too. He knows the history of this, right?
Right.
And he says this keeps happening up there. And I want to give Eric props for this, because when this happened, Eric got on social media and he condemned it immediately, right?
Yeah.
Eric is a very wealthy white guy with influence. We need more very wealthy white guys with influence to do this.
Yeah.
You know, he immediately was like, when he saw the video, he was like, this is like, we can't have this.
Right.
Eric has the type of money that can influence elections. We need more wealthy white men, white women, people to stand up and say, this can't happen anymore. So I applaud Eric for doing that, because a lot of people just don't want to be involved. They don't want their friends to see them say, this is a bad thing, because their friends might not disagree with it.
Right.
So for those of you who especially white people, and I don't want to make this about race, but I thank you for standing up and saying wrong is wrong, and this shouldn't happen to black people or anybody else.
And I say, and I'll say the reason why I think white people or non-black people who get involved is because, in all fairness, you don't have to. You can sit back and live your life and know that this really doesn't affect you a whole lot. And if you don't say anything, it won't cause you any problems. And saying something most likely will cause you problems, even though saying something is probably like literally the least you could do, right? And so I applaud people who are not black, who get involved and stand up and use their voice, even if that's all they use is their voice, to call out these injustices and things like this, because it's needed. With any situation, you can look at minimum wage, for example. When people say, "Oh, minimum wage should be increased to $15 an hour," what's the first argument? The people at McDonald's shouldn't get paid $15 an hour, and all of a sudden it becomes people who think minimum wage should be increased, or people who think minimum wage should not be increased versus McDonald's workers. The truth is, there are more people paid minimum wage or less than a living wage who don't work at McDonald's. There are people in warehouses. There are people who work at even car dealerships, car washes, gas stations, I don't know, department stores, tons of places where they're paid minimum wage or less than a living wage, and they deserve more. But the argument is always versus McDonald's workers, because they're kind of the spokesperson of the movement, right? Anytime people talk about legalizing marijuana, it's always people who don't want it legalized versus potheads. You never have like the doctors, the scientists, the people who can step up and say, you know what, this marijuana could help this person, right? Who's not a pothead, who probably doesn't even smoke, but they know the research, they know the benefits of marijuana. So you always have these arguments, and this is what happens when black people stand up and say, look what has happened, right? And then it becomes the other person who's like, well, what about black on black crime? Well, what about this thing? What about that thing? And it becomes black people versus
the police, black people,
right? You know what I mean?
White people, right?
All these other things that it shouldn't be, when we have to step back, stop and think, take a breath and look at this situation. We're not talking about black on black crime. We're not talking about rioting. We're not talking about slavery. We're not talking about the Boston Tea Party. We're not talking about Christopher Columbus. We are talking about this black man in particular and other black men just like him who have been unarmed, killed by the police, which will be considered murder immediately if anyone else did it, and they would be arrested, charged with murder, and let the legal process take its course. This police officer, there's video, there's witnesses. You got all you need for a murder case right here. And this cop is being protected and not charged with murder.
Two things I want to. Eric just pointed out something, and it's very true. He's like, white people are outraged at this moment. Black people are outraged their entire lives. Because in 3 weeks, the outrage over this will calm down, right? And it'll be a thing of the past for white people. Black men still have to worry every time they see the police sirens going behind them.
Yeah.
Black mothers still have to worry about every time their son leaves the house, is he coming back? I know I have white female friends who have mixed children who are in fear that their sons won't come back. I was talking to my sister yesterday, and she said she didn't know that white people didn't have conversations with their children about how to act when they get pulled over by the police.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to tell my kids, look, you don't answer any questions. You give them your ID and your insurance card. You don't answer questions. You don't, yes, sir, no, sir, be polite. You have to give them, like, the instructions.
Yeah.
There's something I want to say, because I think this needs to be said. And this video that's gone viral was taken by a 17-year-old girl. She will be a senior in high school next year.
Wow.
Two things. I applaud her for doing this. This is a 17-year-old white girl. Okay. There are people who are going after this girl saying that she should have done more. This is a 17-year-old child. There's nothing more she could do. I don't want to hear that she should have went after the officer or done it. This is a 17-year-old child. She did what she could do. She filmed this. She let the world see what was going on.
Yeah.
There's no reason to go after this young lady.
That she did the best possible thing that she could do. And you have to understand that she also has to ensure her safety. And I'm going to tell you, me personally, I've intervened in fights of people I do not know. I saw a kid getting jumped once. I broke the fight up. It was 3 or 4 guys jumping one kid, and I broke it up. I felt confident that if something went down, I could at least defend myself against those guys, or the kid that was getting beat up maybe could help a little bit. You know what I mean? Then I would jump in and help him, right? If I'm in this girl's shoes and I walk across the street and I start filming this, and there's 3 police officers on top of one man and another guy there, I'm the second black man on the scene. What do you think is going to happen to me when I tackle that police officer and get him off his neck?
Yeah.
Do you really think that it's just going to be...
You're trading one life for another.
Exactly. You see, because now to those cops, I'm the second threat on the scene. There's no guarantee they don't get back on his neck, right? There's no guarantee that they don't now get on my neck, right? You have to understand, if this is my child, my brother, my cousin, a close friend of mine, somebody I know, I'm kicking that cop in the neck as fast as possible. The camera probably never comes out, right? But to somebody I don't know, I'm probably going to do the exact same thing this girl does in film. I might be more vocal. Yeah. I might be screaming, "Hey, bro, you need to get off his neck."
There's plenty of vocal people,
you know what I'm saying?
there.
Like, right, and exactly.
There's a white lady that comes up and says, "I'm a paramedic or I'm a firefighter. Let me help him."
Yeah.
She's begging, "Let me help him."
Right.
And they're like, "Nah, get out of here. Go away."
See? So
let me help this man who needs help. This is my job. This is what I do for a living. Let me help this man. Your job is supposed to be the same.
Right.
Let me help this man that you're not helping, that you're supposed to be helping.
And this is, and listen, in a perfect world where situations like this are few and far between, yeah, I might tackle this cop because I might feel comfortable that at the worst, I'm just going to get punched or kicked a couple times, but we both live. I get charged with something stupid like resisting arrest. You know what I mean?
And police officer.
Yeah.
I feel like a good lawyer will get that.
And a good lawyer gets it dropped, a misdemeanor, and I do my 80 hours of community service and pay a fine, and everything's all good. That's in a perfect world. We don't live in that. We live in a world where I might get shot just because I didn't lift my hands up fast enough.
It's funny. This is real life for black people. Like, before COVID, I was trying to get ready to run a half marathon for the Rock and Roll Marathon here in Las Vegas in November. I was in training for that. And I was jogging. Even when COVID started, I was out jogging. But then it started to get hot here in Vegas.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine asked me, "How come you're not jogging anymore?" Because it's too hot during the day. The only time I can jog is at night. And my problem is, if I'm a black man jogging in my own part of town in the middle of the night, after the sun goes down, 9, 10 o'clock, and somebody calls the police on me, right? Now the police come up to me. I have my phone in one pocket, my ID in the other pocket. Am I reaching for either one of them?
Can't. Not without stating what you're doing first.
And even if Philando Castile.
I mean, right.
Yeah. He stated what he was doing. He did everything right. Is training for this marathon, is this getting healthy, is it worth the exchange?
Right.
White people don't ever have to think about that.
Right.
Latinos do. Asians do. Black do. It's very, when we say privilege, that's what we mean by privilege. It's the fact that you can go on about doing normal, mundane tasks in your life and not have to worry about the consequences.
Let me ask all the white men who have a girlfriend or a spouse that you're serious with, when's the last time you put on a hoodie, zip up or pullover, and you went to the gym or went running or to the grocery store or wherever it was just cool out and you needed a hoodie? When's the last time you put that hoodie on and your wife or spouse or girlfriend or whoever stopped you and was like, I don't think you should wear that? Because that's something that my wife has had to say to me when I put on a hoodie before. We've literally had conversations on, why do you wear hoodies? Because I like wearing hoodies, right? Why do you wear them?
It's comfortable.
Why? Can you wear something else? Can you wear something that doesn't have a hood? You see, these are conversations. There's 100 conversations, but this is one of those conversations of a simple clothing item that most white people,
boring, mundane task every day. You shouldn't even have to think about this,
right?
But you do,
and I do, because if I put my hood on for whatever reason, because it's part of the clothing, and I should be able to put my hood on, I can get shot and somebody would literally use my hoodie as part of the reason that I was shot.
Trayvon Martin.
Exactly.
And I don't like doing these shows, by the way.
I hate them.
I like the shows that we get to do where we get to talk about rappers and the dumb stuff they do. We talk a little about social issues, but we can find some humor in them, right?
Right.
And we can laugh about them. And then we can go on and talk about Russell Wilson being petty towards Future.
Right.
Like, I prefer to do those shows. I want to do those shows. But this show has to be done. And not just by us. Like, there's a company called Urban One. Now I believe Radio One changed their name. It's a black-owned media group, the largest in the country.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know where they're at on this. Where is their stand on this? Like, we need that. iHeart Media has tons of urban radio stations that are dedicated to hip-hop music. You want to make money off the black community, but where are you at standing up for the people you're making money off of?
Most of these political things, or a lot of companies, they want to profit off of black people. And I don't talk politics really with anybody. I don't pick a side. I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I literally research people and then I vote. I vote for some Republicans. I vote for some Democrats. I vote for some independents.
I vote for people who I feel suit my interest.
I vote for the people. I don't pick a side. And one of the things that annoys me is you have certain political parties that literally rally to get black votes when it's time to vote. And you see them doing all these political things and they petition and they go out of their way to get black people to feel like, yeah, we care about black people. The day after the election, you don't hear anything else.
No.
Nothing. There's no more anything.
Nope.
And it's only this time of year up to the election that you hear those things, right?
Yep.
And yet here we are in an event, which I have to give like the mayor of Minneapolis props for coming out saying, hey, we want this guy charged with murder, right? Because that's an example of what a person who's doing something, maybe it's political, maybe it's not, but it's the right thing to do, right?
Right.
I ask everyone, where are your friends at when these things happen? Where the people who you're going to vote for, where are they at right now when things like this are happening?
You know it's an election year because Trump came out condemning this.
Yeah, right?
Right. He made one statement on it on Twitter, and now he's gonna go against. He's gonna put the smackdown on Twitter. But it's an election year, right? Because he made the guy who took out a full page ad calling for the death penalty on the Central Park 5 is condemning this. It must be an election year.
Yeah, I mean, and that's also the power of words. I mean, you can put out a 2-minute tweet. Does it mean you care?
Right.
You know what I mean? You can spend, I even ask a lot of my friends, yeah, you can spend 5 minutes on Facebook ranting and arguing with people. But how is this changing your life? Like, I have to live this. I'm a black person. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. And I have to raise 3 girls in this world. And I thought, this is a funny conversation. When we were naming our kids, right? My oldest daughter is 9 years old. So this was 9 years ago. 10 years ago, I guess, right? Me and my wife are having this conversation about the name. And my wife was like, I would like a neutral sounding name, right? She didn't want...
My kids all have quote unquote white names.
Right. You know what I mean?
My kids do.
So I feel like a lot of black people have had this conversation where you want your kid to have just a name that when somebody looks at it on a paper, they can't tell if that
the
child is
resume
black
doesn't
or white
get put
or
on
right.
the other side.
Exactly, right?
Right.
At this time, 10 years ago, my argument for this was in 15, 16 years, when they're looking for a job, it won't matter. Here we are 10 years ago, 10 years later, I was so wrong. And I'm glad we went with the names we chose because on paper, you wouldn't know if my kids are black or white or where they're from, right?
Let's go back to the Amy Cooper lady, right? In Central Park?
Lady in Central Park.
Yeah. She was it the HR department that she was in charge of? For Franklin Templeton?
Yep.
Like, so you see her mentality here then, right?
Yep.
You can't help but to second guess her mentality when it comes to HR issues for her company, right?
Right.
So like this is the thing is like we have to think about this every single day. Did I not get that job because I did something bad in the interview, or did I just lose the job when I walked in the door and they saw that I was black?
That's something that I explained this to someone before, and that was literally what I pointed out, because this was a white person, and he said, yeah, these things happen to white people, and I said not as often, nowhere near as often as it happens to black people. And the thing is like we all have walked into job interviews. Maybe we did great. Maybe there was someone who was more qualified. Sometimes we'll just never know why we didn't get a job. But 90% of the time, probably 95% of the time, when a black person walks out of an interview or they find out they didn't get the job, somewhere in their list of what happened or what went wrong pops up the idea of, did this happen or not happen because I was black?
Right.
And I think the exact opposite of probably 95% of the time when a white person doesn't get a job, they don't have to think, did I not get this job because I was white?
The only time they think that is when the black person gets the job.
Yeah, exactly.
Then it's affirmative action.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Eric just said something. He says, honestly, as a white guy, I hesitate to even comment on issues like these because I don't feel like I have any right. It feels like, who the hell am I to have an opinion? And I'm going to tell you, Eric, you have a right? Because these issues they indirectly affect you. They don't directly affect you, right? When you see these types of issues, when white people speak out, other white people listen. When black people cry out, they don't hear us.
So think about this, and this is for Eric. Clearly, you have black people that you know and you care about. If this was Dallas, because I know you guys are friends, right? If this was Dallas who got choked out by this cop, I'm pretty sure you would be a lot more adamant. You would use more of your resources to find justice in this situation because your black friend was killed. Now, granted, as far as I know, you don't know this guy who was just killed, right? Mr. Floyd. So that same fervency, though, can be applied. Maybe you don't have to use your resources, but you still can use your voice in these matters, simply because if it doesn't stop now, it's only a matter of time before it happens to someone you care about, who happens to be black, or who happens to be a person of color. Because I tell people all the time, whenever you see injustices aimed at one group of people, it's only a matter of time before they start to spread to other groups of people. Because eventually they're going to run out of black people to keep murdering. They're going to run out of situations, right?
And I shouldn't even say in fairness, but this is happening to Latinos too. We're seeing it right now. People are filming. Black people are filming this and making it public for other black people.
Right.
But this is happening in the Latino communities too.
Right. It definitely happens to more people than black people.
Right. But Latinos and blacks get this at a far higher rate than anybody else.
Right.
So the Latino people aren't videotaping it and putting it out there, but that doesn't mean it's not happening.
Right.
And those of us who are minorities, we see what's happening in the Latino communities. We see what's happening with them, but it's not being seen by the white people yet. It's not being seen, but we know it's there.
Right.
We've driven by East Las Vegas.
Yeah. Of course.
Seen what's going on.
Whatever
part of St. Louis, South Minneapolis. I've been there. I've seen this happen to Latinos also. It's this is where we get. The thing that kills me, above color, above anything, right? We're talking about human beings. We're talking about a human life. Somebody made a very good point that if this was a dog, the whole world would be outraged right now, right? Mm-hmm. If this was somebody's little adopted, look at Amy Cooper.
Yeah,
they went and took her dog away from her.
Yeah,
right? Because she was choking the dog and holding the collar wrong.
This woman works at.
They took her dog away.
Worked at a popular firm. She's over the HR department. She clearly knows how race works, right? She clearly knows, and she's such in a frantic frenzy to do something racist. She's using the police as her pit bull or her spear, where she's like, she literally tells the guy, I'm going to call the cops on you and tell him an African-American man is threatening me. Yeah. She didn't say, I'm going to call the cops and tell him this man is threatening me in the park.
No, she said
an African-American man. She did that on purpose.
Yes.
And then she calls 911 and she says, an African-American man is threatening me in the park.
Yep.
Right? Because she knows what happens most of the time when police show up and an African American man is doing anything to a white person in the park, right? So she knew exactly what she was doing. I really applaud her company for firing her basically immediately. Yeah. I think they suspended her in the morning, and 4 hours later they was like, yeah, she's fired, right? They fired her. I applaud them for that because she was using racism as a weapon to get this man hurt.
And I'm curious, like, when I see things like this happen, we got to wrap up the show here, but I'm curious when companies see that, do they make the firing because of the backlash from the public, or do they make the firing because the company actually has morals and believes that? At
some point, and you get into depth, I think that would matter. But on the surface, I don't think it does. I think that sometimes we spend too much time saying, like when a millionaire donates $1 million to charity and people go, oh, he just did it for a tax write-off. But we're missing the fact that he still donated $1 million to that charity. Right. It doesn't matter if he did it because he felt like this cause needs support, or if he did it so he could save some sort of money on the back end of a tax write-off. This is the same situation. I think right now they did the right thing. And I think whether they did it as publicity so that we would think that they're a great company, or because somebody was in there might be some black person in their office, or even could have been a white person who just said, you know what, they did something wrong. The right thing happened. And at the end of the day, and later on, we'll find out if, you know what I mean? Like that's something that later on we can worry about. We need to stop looking at people doing good things and finding bad reasons for them to do it, and just accept that, you know what, they did the right thing right now. Let's worry about this other thing later.
All right, we'd like to thank you guys for watching this special edition of Negro Please. I'm Dallas Scott, Quan the 5'9", HllyWdHff. I really wish we didn't have to do shows like this, but we have to.
Right.
We'll be back Monday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you guys for checking us out. And don't forget to subscribe, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at The Negro Please.
Peace.